days. I'm a king of rock, there is none higher. Sucker MCs should call me sire. To burn my kingdom, you must choose fire. I won't stop rocking till I retire.
Now we rock the party and come correct. All sets are on time and rhyme connect. Got the right to vote and to elect. And other rappers can't stand us, but give us respect. I wanna rock.
Never gets old. Well, what's up, Cyberspace Cadets, Cyberfam, and Fambots galore? It's Irate Prostate. It's Saturday night, and you know what that means. It's time for Exelereighted Deconstruction, featuring Excel and a Tim of the Hun. What's up, folks?
Hi, guys. Hi.
What's up, everybody? And I'm gonna apologize in advance. While I definitely have a theme for what we want to talk about this show, I don't have orderly bullet points like I usually do. So it's gonna be a little bit more of a freeform stream, and it's gonna have a lot to do with the upcoming election.
Well, this definitely fits the channel. Just a little bit. So what's everybody up to? I watched the Alabama-Tennessee game with my dad. It was a great game. What happened? The Vol Navy wasn't there? It was fucked up.
What?
Yeah, COVID shit, I guess. But the Vol Navy, you know, they're all on the Tennessee River right there. They're right, but that's right where the stadium is, right? So they get up in there and they watch it, right? And make noise and stuff. So that's a little bit of useless information. Just
I've never been super into college football, but I mean, obviously, like if I was a Bama fan, of course I would, right? That's like having the Yankees as your home team,
right.
There was a time though when Kansas was #1 ranked and Missouri was #2. And they played at Arrowhead Stadium. And I didn't have tickets. I just knew a bunch of people that were like, they had TVs with antennas and like generators set up just to go party in the parking lot. And I remember like walking from my dad's house at the time to the stadium because it was literally right. I mean, it was like a half mile away. And going down there, just crashing the tailgate party. Like a lot of them were my friends, but some of them weren't. Like it was the biggest party I've ever seen in the parking lot of Arrowhead Stadium. Bigger than any tailgating for an actual Chiefs game. And just joining in with them with like chants like, you know, MIZ, ZOU or whatever is what the chant was, but they changed it to MIZ fuck KU. And when Missouri won, like I was just agitating people. People were trying to get in fights. I've never seen so many drunk people in one area in my entire life, to be honest. Because you had a full stadium,
Right.
plus a whole bunch of people in these parking lots that were partying. That's my best college football memory.
Man,
And
yeah, the tailgate experience is
back,
something,
I was like-
man. It's
like,
awesome.
I'm sorry.
There was
I
a
grew
guy-
up. Go ahead.
Oh, there were 2 people that actually had tickets to the game in that group. They were just having too much fun outside. They're just like, fuck it, right? They paid $100 each for the tickets, and they didn't want to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on the West Coast, so the whole college football thing wasn't a big deal. I grew up right outside of UCSB, which is known as one of the largest party schools for a very long time. They would shut off the entirety of the town around UCSB. It's known as Isla Vista, and they would have parties there. So it's really hard for me to imagine anything outside of that for a college party, because that's what I grew up seeing, was what they actually modeled movies like Animal House after. So
UCB.
it's to be out. Yeah, I just see like mayhem and wreckage everywhere when everybody says, "Oh, we had a great tailgating party." So for me, it's just a whole foreign concept, and I love hearing y'all's stories because it's just so different than what I grew up around.
It's like a universal. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would light couches on fire.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, I know exactly the level you're talking about. Then it's the one in Alabama is called Jacksonville State. It's a fucking.
Okay.
It's like a zoo. It really is like a zoo. So yeah, if you want to party, man.
It's UC Santa Barbara. It was one of the top party schools.
And Auburn had. Auburn is a very psychedelic place. A lot of shroomies. A lot. Anyway, let's. We're gonna skip down to the main room where we've got our visuals queued up and ready to go. Just remember to
Oh shit.
subscribe, hit that bell. All right.
On that note,
do it for me.
maybe I didn't notice it last night, but congratulations on getting monetized.
Thank you very much. You had a
How
lot
many,
to do
how
with
many
that,
years?
dude.
How many years in the making was it? How many years in the making?
It's a little over 3 years.
Awesome. Now it's gonna be great because we're just waiting for you to get demonetized permanently.
That was the deal. No. I won the game because I got yeeted. I mean, I got 1,000 before I got yeeted, right? So that's the game plan. That was the game plan. So
I don't know. You'll be in the Fuck Susan Club soon enough.
well, I mean,
Hopefully you get a nice $30 check from YouTube beforehand.
yeah, maybe. Exactly. I know what you're saying. I've heard of them doing that too. Like
I know a certain
hosing
person I
it.
really like to watch that gets screwed all the time like that. He's still waiting a year or something later.
Wait, we should probably address the chat. Speaking of that, we got 13 people watching already.
What's up,
What's
y'all?
up, to you guys? Marcin Johnson. I'm gonna guess you came over here from the Insomnia stream. Maybe not. I did chill there. We got Duck Dog in the chat. TK Mao. And those are the only people talking.
Welcome to my house, man. You know, I have a seat.
Came out. Oh yeah, we have Duck Dog Marson. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, good.
And Sinrise and Address Us.
Yeah. So I just want to make a point. I say this every stream. If you want a super chat, that's great. Google will take 30% of that. The Streamlabs link is also in the description. But if you just want to get my attention, I'm not very good at paying attention to the chat. So if you at me or at Irate or at Atima, we'll see it. It's highlighted nice and in orange, and we will try to address whatever you're talking about.
Most likely it'll be me because I'm the female. And I'm nosy. Because it's in my nature as a female.
Interesting statement.
It's true. Who moderates chat most often on most live streams you watch? When there's male and female?
TK Mal, Merce, and the ROTC folks still haven't been paid.
That's what it, yeah.
Me.
Yeah, Sinatra says still hasn't been paid, and fucking, yeah, there's a whole lot of people that aren't getting paid.
Well, anyway, I see that you have the VLC player up. So we're playing a video by James Lindsay that he recently released, and it stemmed from a Twitter tweet he made, where he basically said that he's kind of been forced into voting for Trump. A lot of people were commenting saying that, wow, you're such a traitor. Why would you vote for Trump? Because he's done all these terrible things. And his reasoning is actually spot on. In fact, me and Atima were talking, and almost everything he's saying, it was like, you're just 4 years behind us on this.
Yeah. Welcome to the party, son.
Like, yeah, we already knew that all this was going on. And what this really boils down to, and how this is related to our stream, is that the Democratic Party, every step of the way, has been permissive, if not completely complacent, with this critical theory attempt to take over our institutions. Right? And even Donald Trump, I don't know if he has the actual ability to stop the spread of critical theory, especially in government institutions. But at least he has been tipped off to the fact that there's something wrong with it and it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And I mean, this goes back to watching the debates, right? Like the first one where Joe Biden tried to say Antifa's just an idea, man.
Okay, it's not. It never has been just an idea. It's always been a militant wing of the Communist Party.
It's a plan of action, right?
It's not even an idea. It's a militant wing of the Communist Party. It has never ceased being a militant wing of the Communist Party. It started out as it started in Italy as a response to fascism, because the communists didn't like the idea of fascism being able to, or being more popular than communism, because it's the difference between totalitarian and authoritarianism. So, yeah.
Hey, TK Mal donates $2, says, I'm riding dirty for Biden. Legalize cocaine, baby. Okay. And thank you for the $2, preach, man. Or ma'am. I can't fucking misgender anybody.
Beyond that, we had articles come out in left-wing sources that are not, like Robert Reich is a very popular, far-left progressive, but nonetheless, he has a huge following, talking about how we need a Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
Oh,
and the video, with the picture that he put up was an example of South Africa, which has been completely dysfunctional since the abolition of apartheid. And I'm not saying apartheid was a good thing. I'm saying that what replaced it might be even worse.
Oh, yeah. 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 Oh. Whoa. I didn't realize that was the imagery. I've got banned off of Twitter, guys, with no notice. And I don't know what's going on. And I tried to appeal, but I haven't heard anything back. So I don't know. I shared an archive link of the New York Post story and taught other people how to use archive.is. So I may have gotten banned for sharing information.
I'm yeeted from Twitter too right now, which is why nobody saw me post anything about this. You also have people like beyond that, right? So a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, what is that? What is it really going to do? Well, it's what they're going to do is they're going to appoint a whole bunch of critical theorists to say whatever is true is what they want to be true.
Re-education, man.
They don't believe in objective truth, right? It's whatever subjective truth that they want to push forward, which basically just means what they believe is true and anything that they disagree with is not. And put it in terms of the media. Even the way the media is treating information like the Hunter Biden emails. This is on par for the same kind of postmodern idea that language can be power by them just saying, like, Biden gets to just say it's been debunked. And the Washington Post will go say it's been debunked. And all it takes is one person who claims to be an independent fact checker saying, well, I've debunked this because, and the reasons don't matter at that point because you're in so many layers of, this has been debunked. You go down the chain, really they're just circle jerking each other and referencing each other to try to say it's been debunked when it hasn't been. And once again, I feel like this is a very postmodern method. And in fact, this is something I was trying to bring up to Atema. Postmodernism and critical theory, they don't really have, because they don't believe in objective truth, they don't really value honesty. They only value outcome. So everything they do is the means justify the ends.
Well, yeah.
Hey, Darkstar throws in 5 and says, congrats on getting monetized, IP. Didn't you get a chance to watch the Hunter Biden sex tape yet? Oh, fuck. Gateway Pundit released it a few hours ago.
I'm good. Stories of pegging, I can live with just stories of pegging. I don't need to see that, guys. I'm good. Really, I'm good.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm good.
Unfortunately, our wonderful media apparatus will tell us that that's all Russian disinformation.
Oh, yeah. So is the meth pipe hanging out of his mouth, right?
Oh, TK. Thanks. 1488. I will say it. Apartheid was a good thing because people without it had no stake in the building of South Africa, took over the government, and have been stripping the country of its wealth.
Yeah, there's actually a lot more behind the history of it. So, I mean, apartheid probably turned into something that was worse than it was meant to be. But what happened is the Dutch just settled there. Nobody else was using the land. They developed a great, an amazing society. And, the other people around it, they wanted in. They allowed migrants over. But they decided that they weren't going to let these migrants that want to come live in the area vote. Which, if you think about it, it kind of makes a lot of sense if you're trying to keep with your Western, somewhat liberal values as a country. There's plenty of problems that were going on. Don't get me wrong. they turned Nelson Mandela into a martyr. A lot of stuff could have been done differently, but it's more complicated than just the idea that some white people settled in Africa and like they didn't enslave anybody over there.
Well, there was no theft of anything. They
just settled. Yeah, they just settled in an area where there wasn't really anybody living. Like Zulu. Funny enough, I think the story is, I could be wrong. Like, I know just a little bit about the history of South Africa, but I'm pretty sure the tribes that were living in that southern tip of Africa had already been slaughtered by the Zulus.
Yeah. Well,
so if anybody knows more than I do, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. I'm pretty sure that's what happened there.
I'm trying to remember. Okay, so I remember we read some stories on the Cream stream, I think I read, and one of them was there was one of the black leaders, or we watched videos or something about him. And there was one of them where one of the Zulu, it wasn't Zulu, it was the other group of black South African leaders said, "How dare you white people bring these beautiful things to our land that I would want to steal from you? How dare you force me to steal from you?" Like the words that came out of his mouth in his speech when talking about farmers with land and things, and I was just kind of like, okay, that's, you're supposed to teach a 3-year-old that's wrong, so I don't know why this full-grown man who's in a position of leadership in this country is saying these things. So that was my wake-up call. That something was really, really wrong with a lot of the political rhetoric we were hearing at that time, because that was scary. That was a big flag for me.
She came out for another $2 in Super Chat. Says, "Hi, Sunrise. God, I hope you don't get yeeted before these Super Chats get processed, because even if it's only like $10 to YouTube."
No, you have to make $100 before they'll put it through the AdSense.
Yeah, that's right. Like it's like $100 and then they give you a check.
Yeah, I'm at like $4, so.
Well, you're doing a little better.
I'll never see that shit.
TK Mao had you up to 8.
Yeah, I know. Yes, that's obviously increasing. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Well, and then at the same time that Robert Reich article came out about the Truth and Justice Committee, where he says, or the Truth and Reconciliation Committee that the government should appoint. God. Another article in the New Republic comes out talking about how we should just get rid of the Constitution or have an informal one.
Yeah.
It gets in the way of the kind of things that we need to do as a society. Right? Funny enough, they point out as a flaw what is actually a feature of the Constitution. It is supposed to get in the way of what government does. It's supposed to stop government from performing.
That's literally its purpose. That it declares that in the Constitution, it is a check on the power of government.
Yep.
I know, I get really frustrated. Really frustrated.
This leads us in. So James Lindsay he is the expert on critical theory. Almost all the source information that I use for this stream and Atima and Irate uses comes from James Lindsay and his crew of people that have really become experts on critical theory. He had a 180 recently, like I was saying, he tweeted out about how he's going to vote straight Republican, and his reasons are really good, and I think it's worth all of us listening to it. So without further ado, Irate, let's just go ahead and start the video and start doing our commentary.
All right, rolling it.
I suppose it would help if I actually...
All right. So I have to talk to all of you now because apparently everyone thinks I've lost my mind. So what's happened, and I wanted to do a little recording to talk it out instead of just I don't know, trying to tweet through this or writing some monstrous essay. What's happened is that on Twitter, and actually in media over the last several months, my opinion about voting in the upcoming 2020 presidential election has slowly, and rather painfully, to be honest with you, shifted from a position of I don't know what I'm going to do because I don't like either of my options to I can't possibly vote for Biden to I am going to vote for myself because I live in a red state and Trump is going to win my state anyway, to I think I'm going to have to vote for Trump. Not that I want to. In fact, I said on Twitter that until the Democrats are going to walk back where they are, or really the left, it's not really the Democrats, and that's a complicated issue around this, until they're going to walk back where they are with a lot of this radicalism, I have to not only not vote for them, but I feel compelled to vote defensively against them. And I think people need to understand that this is not what a lot of people either hope or fear or think that it is. This is certainly not full-throated support for Trump. Let me begin with that. I have been quite critical of Trump throughout his entire presidency and before his presidency. I wrote an article in 2016 that no longer exists for some reason or another that argued that if the left wanted Trump to win, they should keep calling him racist, and the point was that they should stop calling him racist, get out of this, what I now recognize as critical race theory-based analysis of his candidacy at the time and then presidency, and back away from that line because it would lead to him winning, is what I perceived in summer of 2016, which turned out, at least whether it's the reason he won or not, is what happened. He won, and many people, though
that's exactly
whether
what
it's
happened.
decisive or not is hard to say, many people certainly contribute, or say that contributes to why he won. So I've been critical.
Pause there. I mean, what you just said there, so James Lindsay at least had the insight to understand that continuing to call Trump racist based on his political platform, which nothing about his political platform is particularly radical, and James Lindsay's going to concede that later as far as how Trump governs. He governs kind of like the center-right candidate that Trump is. And I just want to say, I have a lot of problems with Trump myself. I didn't vote for him in 2016 because I'm safely in a red state, but I'm voting for him now. I mean, I would prefer a much more libertarian candidate. I would prefer somebody more like Rand Paul. Donald Trump is still doing a lot of things that I think are fallacies of all the prior administrations.
But
I
there's
think he's doing.
politics.
I think he's doing some good stuff too. But we have to look at the reality of the situation. Your choice is Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and the title of this video is "Biden is not the room." So I just want you to keep that in mind as James Lindsay keeps talking. That the issue is Biden is not the room.
Okay, so I was also going to say, at some point, I think maybe we need to lightly address the Reason TV video that came out that said voting is overrated, because it's dangerous for the Libertarian Party to be doing this. It was really stupid. But for the first time in my 2 decades of voting, I'm voting straight party. I've never voted straight down ticket ever in my life. Ever. I've only registered to a party once, and that's because in Texas you have to. And for the first time ever, I am voting down ballot. Down ballot Republican.
Yep. I actually even looked up the judges that are up for election and found out which ones were Republican and which ones weren't.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fairly true, except for I mean, this time we're talking about the entire way we think of our country. It's not it's like Biden. I don't think, by the way, I don't think he particularly cares about critical theory, but I know he's going to be permissive to it because the rest of the Democrats have adopted it, and there's reasons for it because it's gaining traction, and it has a lot of tools that make things really powerful. Like, especially once you can actually throw out the idea of objective truth. Once you throw that out, and that's no longer a standard for what you have to argue for, just imagine the possibilities of what you can argue for. So politically, they can turn the postmodern ideas into something that, I mean, would be monstrous for this country. Something none of us would want, even liberals like James Lindsay, who probably want way more government than I would ever care to have. But at least he understands the principles behind liberalism, right? Classically, and why those are important and why we need to protect them, and why Donald Trump, for all his faults, is at least kind of a bulwark against this attack from these critical theorists.
Well, and you guys realize that this is the exact reason why the founding fathers were so vehemently and adamantly against a two-party system, right?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't fans of it. They weren't fans of democracy, even.
No,
which is one of the things that the critical theorists, I mean, what they want is ideal democracy, which is some sort of direct democracy, except for the people will vote based on their identity groups in a way that benefits certain like historically marginalized groups over another. Like, it's really, really dangerous, and it's really, really scary to think of that. And I don't want to see it spread in our government any further than it already has. And it might not even work. Like, Trump might not be enough. Voting Republican might not be enough to fix the Democratic Party and get this shit out of their head. But
I think the Democratic Party is dead.
It needs to.
I think it's dead already.
It needs to go through the same reformation that, and this is one thing I don't think James Lindsay picks up on, but I know is absolutely true. So in 2008 and 2012, when Ron Paul really shook up the Republican Party, he actually changed the face of the Republican Party. And there's a lot more, and they're not Ron Paul libertarian, but I call them the conservatarians. Right, we've seen the rise of conservatarians in the Republican Party, like
Yes.
things Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz.
Okay, now it's not fair to call them conservatarians because those are just Tea Party members. Seriously, these guys are. That's why I joined the Tea Party in 2007. I was a registered Republican, but I voted like the majority of the Tea Party ticket in my area. I voted for.
Well, in the original Tea Party rallies were Ron Paul supporters, so
And it was
you're not wrong.
Fucking awesome, dude! It was so much fun, dude. Sorry.
All right,
Tea Party was cool.
we can go on with the video.
But I was just saying, yeah, this is the most scary and polarized election I've ever seen in my life, and I really don't like fucking commies.
All along, I got into what I'm doing, fighting the woke left, specifically because I wanted to make left-wing parties, center left-wing parties rooted in universal liberalism, I should point out, electable again, because they are not. They are not now because they've taken up too much critical theory. They have taken up far too much of a rather radical approach to progressivism that does not stay rooted even in liberal values like individualism, despite what they say as calling themselves the party of science, in use of scientific evidence and rationality and reason. This is not what's happening. And left-wing parties have become increasingly unelectable. And so I got into the entire criticism of the woke thing, specifically with the hope of trying to make reasonable left-wing parties come back to the fore and to be electable to defeat what I thought and still think is a realistic concern with parties on the right. That hasn't changed. As for Trump himself, I'm not a big fan of the way that Trump governs, and I mean that in both regards. People challenge me frequently, about his policy. Well, he has governed as a rather run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-line Republican in terms of much of his policies, and for me, being that I'm actually on the left, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't think it's a disaster. I don't freak out about it. I don't scream at the sky over it. I do, however, not actually agree with a lot of conservative policy. I don't claim to know the right answers about policy, but my intuitions and my analysis indicate something more to the left of what the Republican Party is doing right now. So, in fact, to speak for a moment about my politics, people talk about being politically homeless, and I'm like, son, you don't even know what it's like to be politically homeless. I'm a thing that doesn't exist. I've been telling people for years that I'm a left-wing libertarian, and people just laugh at me. And if you actually look at what libertarians claim to believe, sort of more in this kind of primitive paleo-libertarian thing that's become ascendant now, I'm not a libertarian. I don't think taxes are theft. I think taxes are okay. I think they're a necessary part of a functioning system. I do think regulation in a reasonable sense is important and valuable. I'm not the kind of libertarian that goes around calling themselves a libertarian these days, but under the broad understandings of what libertarian thought is about, that being that we should have the smallest government possible, no excess government, in order to do the job that it needs to do, and that individual freedoms and the liberty of citizens being secured is the role of government, the primary role of government. In those senses, I am actually philosophically libertarian. I think it's more accurate to say that I'm what's called a traditional liberal, but that's liberal in the old sense, and liberal in the old sense is libertarian today in some other sense. So it's a little complicated, all of these words meaning many things at once. Nonetheless, I've described or tried to describe myself to my libertarian friends, my genuine...
Dream.
There we go.
All right, yeah. What he said right there is, it's something I can completely understand, but this is where it goes back to where I don't think that he's read a lot of recent political philosophy.
Yeah,
I think he's read. I think he's read like all the classic liberals, right? I'm sure he has, but I don't think he's read like libertarians like Hans Hermann Hoppe. Not even like going back to Murray Rothbard, and those are extreme libertarians. Everything he said, like I can completely agree with. I just don't think he understands to what extent that regulations get passed, not in the name of trying to get better outcomes, but in the name of protecting certain business interests.
Yeah, I was going to say in decreasing competition.
And I think he probably has this idea that government has more power than it actually does to affect change. I look at things like even the civil rights movement. If the civil rights law was never passed, do you really think that we would still have signs out today saying whites only and blacks only in the South? I don't think so. Because before, like, government is always behind when it comes to things like this, right? The sentiment is already changing among the public before government intervenes. One of my favorite pet topics on this is child labor laws. None of those passed until like 95% of families didn't have to send their child to work. Anyway, point made. You can go on.
Libertarian friends as being a left-wing libertarian, which they say doesn't exist or can't exist by definition because left-wing implies some degree of statism. Well, I'm not a rampant anti-statist. I don't want there to be excess state, and I don't want there to be tyrannical state, but I do believe there should be some state. And I've also tried to describe myself as a so-called minarchist, meaning rule by minimal government, a minarchist who believes in a much bigger min than most people who use that term. So that kind of places me in political philosophy somewhere on that so-called political compass test that many people have taken with the 4 quadrants, I usually score pretty far down in the lower left corner, which means I'm pretty strongly libertarian and pretty far to the left. I will admit that over the past year, the last couple of times that I've checked on the test, I've moved from a position that was much further to the left to a place that's much more in the center of the left, but it is still distinctly in the middle of the left range on that compass. And as far as my libertarian axis goes, I know that it's difficult to convey numbers without a picture, but it was in the range of -7.5 out of 10, and it remains at about -7.5 out of 10, whereas my left leaning has moved from roughly -7.5 to roughly -5. So I still remain pretty left liberal, in the sense where liberal means what people are now saying, small L liberal, which means libertarian, but left oriented. So I do actually have many progressive values. I do think that a progressive tax structure is a good idea, and so on and so forth. So I do have some issues with the way that Trump governs, but he's not governed in a way that is particularly ridiculous for a right-wing politician who has been democratically elected in our American system. And it's that American system that I'm 100% behind, even if somebody that represents my politics is not currently the one sitting in the chair in the Oval Office. So Trump, beyond that, I have criticized in the past for being a postmodern president, and you will know for sure if you follow my work that I'm no fan of postmodernism. And that, of course, I find concerning as well. I think that certain actions that Trump takes, the way he plays with the media, the way he plays with his role as presidential, are actually deconstructive. Some of that may be necessary, some of it may be speaking truth to power, but I think it's reckless. And that I think that he plays with it a bit more strongly than is advisable. I know I do this myself, but I'm not in the office of the president. I do think that the structure of the state should be taken a little bit more seriously than he does. And so I find things like some of his antics.
Okay, so here's where I have a problem. Absolutely 100% Trump is deconstructing, and it's not postmodernist that he's doing here. This is, think of it as, I don't know, it's kind of complicated to explain. He is deconstructing something. It's a facade that people have. It's basically the man behind the curtain, and it has to be deconstructed because it's not even supposed to be the fucking premise of how we run our country. It is not. We are not supposed to look to our president like some sort of celebrity. We are not supposed to look to our government like it is going to take care of us. Our government is there to, the Constitution is there to constrain the government. The government should always be viewed as our enemy. Like, it's, the president has to be populist as well. So I don't know if, because James is not as well read on the political theories, he may not understand the full, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm struggling with it. The full scope of the philosophy behind the nature of the American spirit. There's this whole like lionizing of government and what it's supposed to do for us is what absolutely has to be deconstructed. And I'm kind of grateful that Trump is inept in some ways that shows just how little we can depend on government. And I think he's doing it intentionally.
Yeah, well, in Donald Trump, once again, like, he ran to do very specific things, and I think he's been pretty good at doing those specific things. I don't like how he's handled the Fed. I don't like how he's handled a lot of things, to be honest. But I just look at the alternative.
I'll take 4-piece deals, though.
And it's scary.
It's fucking terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And I'll take the 4-piece agreements too. Like, I'll take that.
Well, yeah, and Donald Trump that's one thing where, like, I just can't believe. I can't actually believe that James doesn't bring this up, but when Donald Trump said that he wasn't a big fan of war, I think he is intuitively an anti-war candidate. I don't understand why he couldn't pull troops out as fast as, faster than he did, and why he still has troops out there. I think there is a lot of, like I said, swamp creatures out there telling him, if you do this, you're going to see this disaster and it's going to ruin your presidency. And I think that's going to influence him, because Trump is also an egoist, right? He doesn't want his ego to be destroyed because of some bad decision he made for pulling troops out somewhere.
I don't know. See, I think people attribute a lot of that to him. And over the years of watching him run businesses and watching them love and hate him across the magazines and newspapers, I think Trump is an idealist. And I think there's not a lot of this malignance that you see people attribute to him. I think people don't understand, and maybe it's just because I'm abrasive as well naturally, and I don't really care if I offend people. There's no malignance behind a lot of his shit talking. It's just shit talking. So I don't know if it's narcissistic or if it's what's the opposite of that, where you're constantly a perfectionist. So I don't know, because he's definitely an overachiever. And hey, Addie, shit, how's it going, man? I don't know. He doesn't quite fit the stereotype of a narcissist. His kids actually respect and look up to him. That's not generally what I would say a narcissist does with their kids. But I don't know. I don't know. I think he is definitely aware of people idolizing the position, and that's really stupid. We don't lionize. We're supposed to always look at our leadership with a scrutinizing eye. And I think
in America, yes,
it's a premise of our country,
right? It's amazing how the left randomly was like, I trust our intelligence agencies, just because they were going against Trump. It's like, since when did trusting our government become a left-wing idea? I don't get it. Don't get it at all.
Sorry, my kids are running in and out in front of the house. It keeps telling me that my thing is going off. Sorry about that, guys. Loud and
all right, I think we can continue on.
I just wanted to point out that his premise is missing, that he doesn't quite understand that we really aren't supposed to be looking to government for anything, and that he's kind of caught in his own little trap here. So, and I can't remember who earlier said you can hear in his own voice the immaturity, like he's working this out for himself.
Yeah, that's what makes him an actual leftist. Right? Like, he actually believes the government can solve problems, and I don't. I don't really believe that.
It's been proven throughout time that doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I just outside of providing a national defense from invaders, I'm not sure what government can actually solve.
Well, the government isn't supposed to solve anything. It's literally there to stop people from solving too many things at once.
Yeah, and when it does try to solve something, its only weapon is a sledgehammer, which is another reason I'm very, very reserved on government action. Absolutely.
But I really hate the whole left and right paradigm, because we no longer have that left and right paradigm. I don't ever think it was actually a good paradigm to begin with, because Americans are inherently anti-authoritarian. It's kind of in the DNA of our country. It's part of our culture. So it's the two-party system inherently doesn't work because of that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and two-party system aside, what you're talking about, I think, is what James Lindsay is kind of discovering here, is that there's more to it, and let's let it go on for a little bit.
Yeah, his stream of consciousness is fascinating. This next bit is very fascinating.
That was permission to hit play, Irate.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
What the hell? I turned the sound off.
It's where, necessarily name calling or the, it stands out that he made that one video. And I know it's a strange thing to have stand out. And it's not that it's particularly chilling, but it's about this video he put out about him being reelected every year, and it went to infinity or something. Trump 2020, Trump 2024, Trump 2028, Trump 2032, Trump 2036, and it went faster and faster and faster, Trump infinity. And that deconstructs the idea of the tradition of term limits that's now become part of our American approach to the presidency that I think need not be deconstructed. I do also take some measure of concern with Trump's rhetoric. I'm not saying that he's boorish. I'm not saying that he's coarse or rude or that he speaks poorly or any of this to the degree that those are true. I'm actually not bothered by those things.
But he's entirely wrong, because that wasn't the point of the meme.
They just don't bother me.
The point of the meme was never about him being in office. It was about the ideas that he brought to the office being perpetuated beyond his time in office.
Also,
and
this
he
is
missed the important part.
This is a truism that has been spread by multiple creators that support Trump across the internet. So people that support Trump, they don't take him literally, but they take him seriously.
Yeah.
And people that oppose Trump take him literally, but do not take him seriously. That's the dichotomy there. When Trump speaks, I don't think everything he says on Twitter or everything he says at a rally is meant to be taken in some very literal, rigid context.
Well,
he doesn't even speak that way. In fact, it's just one of those things. A guy that speaks like that, I've met those New Yorker types, right? He speaks like an Upper Manhattan kind of dude. I understand that he's the modern day P.T. Barnum. Yeah, the way he speaks it's just.
It's meant to be fantastic. It's just like P.T. Barnum. He was a character in real life because it increased his brand.
Exactly. Thank you for saving me there.
He's really good at marketing, and he uses satire or sarcasm and hyperbole a lot, and it's so dumb because you can tell he's being the whole "I am the least racist person in this room" and all that kind of, not since Abraham Lincoln, and everybody's screaming LBJ. Well, yeah, I don't think so, but it's so it's, to me, he's entertainment. I understand what he's doing. It's imagery. It's emotional imagery, for lack of a better way to describe it, because it's really
it's ingrained as him as a person. But his actions, I think, speak louder than words.
Exactly.
And even even James Lindsay admits, I don't know if we got there because I've listened to this twice, but Donald Trump's just kind of governing in a way that you would expect him to govern. That's it. He's
literally doing what he said he would do, and even if I don't like it all the time, because I really don't like getting in bed with Big Pharma, and a lot of other things he's done, he's doing what he said he would do. So
yeah, it's actually very unremarkable, despite what the media tries to tell you about how evil he is.
So I just wanted to point out that the entire premise it's Trump 2020 was supposed to be the concept of keeping America great, going on past his presidency, and the fact that the imagery eluded him means that he needs to lighten the fuck up, because Trump isn't just a person, it's an idea, and that's why they call it Trumpism now, is because he's just kind of brought back American exceptionalism, and they're afraid to say American exceptionalism. Sorry.
so they make it into imagery and memes.
Right, you might want to speed this up to 1.25.
Is that some of his rhetoric that he lays out, whether it's to bait the media, whatever his purpose is, some of the rhetoric that he lays out flirts with authoritarianism in ways that I'm frankly uncomfortable with. And I'm no friend of authoritarianism because I'm authoritarian axis. I don't think that Trump is governing as an authoritarian. I did not say that. I said that he flirts with authoritarian rhetoric, which I find to be concerning. And especially if you set that against the kind of strongman populist demagoguery that has in the past produced authoritarian regimes, I can understand why people have some concerns. And I had some of those concerns for a while, but I still see no evidence that leads me to believe that he would act inappropriately on those things. So this is why I don't particularly support Trump. He doesn't represent my politics, or maybe he would if he wasn't presiding as a Republican, but he doesn't represent my politics as he's governing. He does things I find disconcerting around the office of the presidency, and with concern to the way that he approaches issues that are rightfully in the kind of authoritarian wheelhouse. So I find there to be some issues. There's also the bigger, grander issue, the elephant in the room, that he absolutely pisses people off. And some of that I have now decided is well-deserved, well-earned, well-needed. He is, in fact, putting his finger on the sore, or on some of the sores, and driving certain entities that I think have left the rails and were able to hide it quite well to reveal that they're completely off the rails. And I'm actually getting to be thankful for that. So my views on Trump are getting more complex, more nuanced. I would not vote for him, however, under normal circumstances. In fact, if we were under normal circumstances, I would probably be urging, as I did in 2016, as I did in 2018, for everybody to be going out and voting down the line blue to punish the Republican Party for what I see as a lot of behavior that was, in many regards, right near, it was all legal, but it was right near the edge. It violated the spirit of the rules, and I think that this was a constant throughout the Obama tenure. Again, whether that's right or wrong in the grand political scheme, that's a question for debate, but I think that this is what happened, and this is what I would be doing if things were normal. Things are not normal. Things are very not normal. So, in July, I had the opportunity to go talk to Joe Rogan on his podcast. Many people saw it. I think it had 2 million views in the first 2 weeks or something. I think it's close to 3 million views now. And the night before, I was in a hotel room in Los Angeles, COVID lockdowns, can't go do anything. I was exhausted, I didn't feel like doing anything anyway, and I was extraordinarily agitated. A lot of people don't know what was going on behind the scenes then, of course, because I was by myself in a hotel room in LA, and I was very agitated. I was very worked up, and what I wanted to talk to Joe about, and I did not really talk to Joe about, is how absolutely angry, livid I was by the last day of June, which is actually when I would have been in that hotel room that night, at how we were being gaslit and lied to by the media, by our left-wing politicians, major Democratic figures, including both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who were not at that time denouncing the riots, though they have since. They were actually encouraging the outbreaks of protests, as they called them. The media were telling us that all of a sudden this coronavirus that's had us locked down for months is irrelevant in the face of crusading for racial justice. And this is all rooted in critical race theory, and I know that. I know that as well as or better than anybody on this planet. And I stared at this in disbelief. I stared at a man on national television with a burning building behind him telling us that the protests were mostly peaceful. And Kamala Harris came out and said that we should support this fund that was paying to bail out the people setting the buildings on fire. And I thought, this is not normal. And I was absolutely infuriated that night, June 30th, in that hotel room in Los Angeles. Oh, sweet. Joe put me up nice. 9th floor, Hilton. Not bad. So I'm in this nice room, looking out the window off this balcony. I had a balcony. Beautiful night for LA, I guess. COVID, there's not any pollution going on. And so And I'm just like agitated. I'm pacing. I'm talking fast. I'm on the phone talking to people what I might say, what I might try to hit, what kind of topics I have to get into, talking to Joe, my chance to talk about this issue to a properly huge audience. And all I keep coming back to is how pissed off I am about the gaslighting and the lies and the media and the fact that our major media enterprises and major Democratic politicians are lying to us about it. And so something shifted.
Right here for a second.
Actually, something shifted the first time.
Yeah, so I do not think that James Lindsay, as smart as he is the only person that came to that conclusion. This is why I actually predict a Trump landslide. I mean, Tim Pool forever would just never say he was going to support Trump. And then finally one day he said, fuck it, voting for Trump. Right? Well, and he resisted well past the time that he had enough information to realize, look, you gotta, for all of Trump's faults, he's the only stand against this nonsense that we have. Right? It's the only message you can send out to the world to say, yeah, we'd rather have Trump than the bullshit you're trying to feed us.
Well, Trump is okay. I'm going to say something that makes people very uncomfortable, and you're just going to have to deal with it. It's a realism. Populism is the cornerstone of the American Republic. You cannot have a representative republic without populism. You just can't. Because without populism, you have no way of representing the people. Okay? So populism is going to have to be part of the mindset that works, or that flows into the amalgamous weirdness that is American politics.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And also, to go with that, right? So Trump's brand of populism is not very far outside of the normal American discourse, right? If you look back,
in the middle of it.
Yeah, you look back, in 1995, what Trump was running on, he could have easily been a Democrat, especially the way he's governing. But there's something new going on here. And I think this is James Lindsay kind of coming to light to see there's something going on. He already knows that this critical theory and postmodernist nonsense is invading our institutions. And then he realizes that the Democratic Party is becoming a vehicle for it. And that it's far more dangerous than anything that Trump is doing. Trump is not the far right candidate. He's not the libertarian candidate I want him to be. I mean, how much different is Donald Trump than Bill Clinton, how he governed in the 90s?
Okay, a lot different. Yeah. Donald Trump is not raping every storage of anything.
Whoa,
we have.
I said governed.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about governance.
Well, yeah, both sides were willing to play ball.
Well, yeah, but Clinton was just so destructive to the stores and stockpiles we had, though.
He fucked the military, but when it came to Congress and stuff, they were cranking stuff out. The legislature was coming out, the whole crime bill, all that stuff. They were just, it was. That's what government looks like. Right, they create shit like that, and then they repeal shit like that. That's how it works, and we haven't been getting any of that for fucking 4 years.
Well, I was going to say, Tyro says populism is just an appeal to what people want. The issue we have right now is that we have people who want to drink cyanide. We have to let them drink the cyanide. That's the side effect of having a free and open republic. If they want to drink the cyanide, you have to let them. They have to. The other half of having freedom is facing the consequences of having freedom. So if they want to try to do that, and they're going to do it personally on their own time, you have to let them drink the cyanide. Now, if they try to tell the rest of us we have to drink the cyanide with them, that's when the populism needs to push back.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing right now, is that the natural state of American politics is populist. It has to be populist. And the people that want to drink the cyanide, we aren't. We're using it metaphorically. We're using it metaphorically because it is just as deadly what they're doing. This is Jamestown, and I know exactly what he's talking about. You have to let them go create their own little crazy society, and the government wants to make us all drink the cyanide. Well, the government is not being populist, which is why we have Trump as a symptom. He is the response. You're going to get a loud asshole in positions of power when you don't have people listening to the quieter assholes in positions of power.
I'm gonna see like Trump's like this white blood cell gone crazy.
Kind of. He's like a killer T cell.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of cells at work. Sorry.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
So, it's actually really adorable. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not gonna get drilled, but you're right. You're right, Marcin Johansson. They are abdicating responsibility in favor of repercussion-free decision making, and that's. Yeah, and then Tyro comes in and says, "We are in the middle of Ayn Rand's struggle between cake and cyanide. Compromise is death. Progressives have now ceased compromise and are going full cyanide. Fortunately, they're demanding the cyanide is making everybody go, oh, I think you might be a lot crazy. Go sit in your corner. You need a fucking timeout."
Dude, we're on the edge. We're on the edge of some fire.
You were absolutely correct in your statement there, sir. So.
It's like the only antidote for cyanide is lead. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and that's going to be the natural response, and we can't stop that natural response, because if we try to stop that natural response, whether it's metaphoric lead or whether it's physical lead, if we stop that response, you're trying to fight nature, and it's not going to work.
Right.
You have to figure out, we have to find a proverbial pimp hand that snaps people out of it in a way that hopefully doesn't lead to bloodshed. I kind of think we're past that point, and I'm kind of worried about it.
Right.
But me too.
Exactly, Bullwinkle.
All right.
This
I
is
guess
fine.
we can hit play.
Indeed.
Buildings were set on fire. Mike Nana and Benjamin Boyce and I got together and had a podcast, and I was drinking kind of a lot, and we just kind of like, I don't know, we took the gloves off a bit, as we said. We just talked more plainly about this issue. We talked about this issue much more the way that we talked about it privately than we ever had publicly, trying to craft a message and all of this crap. We weren't dishonest about anything we did, but we were trying to be more careful and measured. And then they started setting buildings on fire and gaslighting us about it, and we was like, no, we're just going to tell it how it is. So anyway, I end up going on Joe Rogan. I'm so tired. Nobody knows this, but I woke up at like 4 a.m. because I'm from the East Coast, well, Eastern time anyway. And I was LA, so I just woke up at like 4 a.m. I don't sleep well in hotels as it is. Wake up at like 4 a.m. I can't go back to bed. I'm exhausted by the time we finally tape with Joe. So everybody's like, "Oh, your pacing was so great. Your timing, you weren't in a rush. You were so calm." Yeah, I was freaking exhausted and had like one of the worst headaches I've ever had in my life the entire interview. And so it goes. Slowed me down a little bit. So I didn't end up ranting at all about how mad I am, or was, and still am, about being lied to that way. So something's badly off. And so, did any of this calm down? Okay, June 30th, that's a whole month of these riots. Has anything calmed down? No, well, a little. It's not total mayhem every night, but there's mayhem every night still, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks later. And the articles have started to come out, and we have these things happening at the debates. Joe Biden, will you pack the court? Will you add members? Now, let me get something straight for everybody on Twitter who's stupid. Packing the court does not mean putting people on your side in the court. Packing the court means adding justices to the court to change its composition. Okay, so I don't want to hear it. Don't say, "Oh, the Republicans are packing the court." No, they did pack the court
that was
in the 1860s,
that was a real argument going on,
which is the last time that happened.
I know.
But that's not happened in an awful long time. And it's been stably 9 people for a really long time. Packing the court means that you don't like the composition on the court, so you add people to it until you do like the composition on the court. That's a different thing. And so Joe Biden, are you going to do this? Doesn't answer. looks down the barrel of the camera in the first presidential debate and just rants to the American people about how important it is to vote or something completely off the topic until his time runs out. Just runs down the clock completely unabashedly. Doesn't answer the question, refuses to answer the question. Kamala Harris gets asked straight by Mike Pence, who pushes her and pushes her and pushes her. I've thought, as a matter of fact, pardon your tender ears, I was with a conservative person watching the vice presidential debate, and I said at least 3 or 4 times that Mike Pence looks like a dildo. I'm not a huge fan of, this was, just a few weeks ago, I'm not a huge fan of these people, okay? And Mike Pence puts Kamala Harris on the spot and is like, are you guys going to add justices to the court to get what you want out of it? And she pulls the same trick. She doesn't answer the question. She says, oh, you want to talk about that? I want to talk about that. Let's say some crap about Honest Abe. Or some other total deflection, never answers it. Pence calls her out, but nevertheless, she never had to say it. Later on, it comes down to that we don't need to know whether they're going to do that.
No, she rewrote history
and the
about
messaging around
Abe
has been very strange. But nevertheless, we have not heard them say unequivocally that they will not just start adding justices to the court. But meanwhile, I'm flooded with these articles. I'm seeing these articles written all over the place.
Well, it's
if
funny. Pause real quick.
Republicans win, we need to start ignoring the...
Yeah, so since James Lindsay went off on this rant, Joe Biden came out and said, I believe he said he would appoint a committee to determine if the composition of the court needs balanced, and then decide if he's going to appoint more justices in order to reflect the balance that was needed. Which, of course, he's going to appoint a whole bunch of people that are going to agree with him, which is going to make it so that they say, yeah, you need to appoint these justices that are liberal to make the composition of the court more in your favor. Right? Like, the language of what they used, I thought it was remarkable.
Well,
I guess they were trying to make people feel good by saying, well, I'm going to appoint a committee first.
I want to say that's because that's exactly how the Republicans did it back in the late
1860s.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't remember. That's the only reason I could think of, other than it's a virtue signal of, oh look, we're going to be very official in how we do this.
Yeah, it's a facade to make it sound like it's something other than what it is, which is making the court composition something that will favor them. And this is actually one thing that I was talking to you kind of before the stream, but if you actually read what a lot of these critical theorists say, that they believe that getting people through law school and getting them appointed to courts is a vehicle in order to get critical theory ideas actually permitted in America. So you can guarantee that if they do this, they're going to pack the court with a whole bunch of people where their goal is not to interpret the Constitution in a way that's in any way fair-minded, but rather to make creative arguments to skirt around the Constitution to allow for ideas that critical theory promotes.
Hey, Luna Shen 3, Martian Johansson, 1337 says, what issue would you like to see addressed by government? Put Biden and Trump out of your minds. Who would be the best political candidate in your mind to put into office?
Rand Paul.
No.
Deal with the Fed.
No. Okay, are we talking about in terms of okay, so we're talking about right now today, like in terms of
somebody living, yeah.
Somebody living. It has to be somebody living.
Well, I don't know. That's what.
I mean, because honestly,
who would you like to see run? Who do you think would make a good president? No trouble voting for him. No compunction whatsoever.
I keep my answer Rand Paul. I think he's the best option right now.
I would hold my
I like Trey Gowdy.
I was going to say, show me somebody who's anti-Patriot Act, because all those people signed off on and agreed with
Like
the
Rand
Patriot.
Paul. Yep.
Yeah,
Rand Paul, the last re-upping, he voted for it, I thought.
Yeah.
No.
He didn't. I think he abstained.
Maybe it was Cruz.
I don't know.
I don't know. He's got some weird ideas that just make me uncomfortable, like mandatory vaccines and things like that he's discussed. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. But if I would ever, without compunction, vote for a politician, I would have to think that politician is the literal Antichrist, and I'm not a Christian. So,
Well, also at this point, like, you know, we have Joe Biden running for president. Why can't I just conscript Ron Paul?
because he's like way too old.
He's only 3 years older than Joe Biden, and he still like rides like on his bicycle for like 5 miles a day. Like I'm saying, if we're going to go like as old as Joe Biden, fuck it, let's just get the guy I want.
I don't know. Mike Lee is a Mormon. I can't go for that. I don't trust. I mean, it's like, you know, I know that Howard Hughes like preferred to hire Mormons. Did you know that, Timma? Yeah, because he said they were more honest and they made better FBI agents, and he recommended to Edgar Hoover that he recruit a bunch of Mormons. And,
I like Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz right now.
Jordan's cool,
but I want to see how they act whenever they have the majority.
Gates is he the one that adopted the kid? Like he's like looks kind of gay. I don't know. Not so.
I don't know enough about him for that. I just
My daughter's-
know that Rancy went on the House Judiciary.
He's got like big hair. Like
My daughters call him the Chad of the Republican Party.
let's put him up because I think
Because he's got like the perfect
yeah.
hair and everything. My daughters go, "Oh look, it's a Chad." Then I don't think they don't know anything about him. They asked me, "Is that a Republican or a Democrat?" And I said, "It's Republican." And they go, "Oh, it's Chad of the Republicans."
Oh, I would vote for Rick Grinnell, man. Now that I'm thinking about it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
See, I
dude.
need to know more about these people.
Absolutely. Shit. Let's see. Who you pulling up?
I don't know.
I thought I heard Excel typing.
No.
Yeah.
I'm shoveling a little bit of chips in my mouth because I was.
Yeah, the one that adopted the kid. He's not married, and he adopted a boy. And it looks weird. Just looks weird. I don't know. Matt Gaetz
did?
Yeah.
Well, I don't care if he's gay. My daughters think he looks like a Chad because he's so like well groomed and everything, and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's funny.
perfect teeth. Yeah.
Oh my God, these people are. I could be their father.
Oh, what?
That you know, it's like you're gonna. You say, oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I know how you feel, bro. It's like whenever you're talking about like a rookie quarterbacks like Matt Mahomes or Patrick Mahomes, and you're just like, I totally could have been his dad. That's how I know I'm old.
Yep. Yeah, he's from Florida, right? Matt Gaetz, yeah. The son of was born in Hollywood, Florida. Son of a politician named Don Gates.
Tom of Loxley brought up Elon Musk. You know what? Like, if Elon Musk, like, not for president, but if he got into politics, it'd be fun.
Yeah, he
Like,
would be fun.
I would promote that. Like,
Is that Occam?
I'm 100% for Elon Musk for whatever office he's going to run for.
That sounds like Occam.
That would give us so much content to cover.
Dude. Tom, I got to introduce you to Occam because he is obsessed with Elon Musk. It's fun.
I was just giggling and thinking that.
Yeah.
I met Occam. By the way, what's up, memes?
Hey, James, what's happening? All right, you ready to play some more? James Lindsay? Why he went from like went from completely like I will never fucking vote for anybody.
I'll never vote for fucking Trump.
Like I've got to vote Trump. Oh fuck!
And now I'm voting not only Trump, straight Republican ticket.
Scheiße.
Or no, sorry, if the Democrats win, we need to just ignore the Supreme Court. We need to redefine what the Supreme Court does so that its jurisdiction is made much smaller so that it can't stop a democratic government if the Democrats win. We need to ignore the court. We need to ignore the Supreme Court. We need to possibly fill the court.
And he's coming from you can tell, all right, so the deal is he's ethically, assessing this for himself, right? He's making these decisions based on his own personal ethics, which is huge with philosophical people, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. It's
Okay.
part of why this is an amazing rant and also worth listening to.
All right,
You know what? Let's let it play out for like a good 20 minutes.
you got it.
Sympathetic
Let's just let
judges.
it
We
play
need to make the court more balanced to progressive, woke bullshit. And we can't get a straight answer out of the mainstream politicians. Meanwhile, I go reading some of the things that they're putting on their website, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I go and I read their racial equity plan, Build Back Better, all this rhetoric. It doesn't sit well. I don't like racial equity. I don't think that that's the way to go. I like equality. I've been absolutely clear about that with a great deal of understanding of the relevant theory, which is called social equity theory, which has been hijacked by critical race theory. And I don't think equity is the right way to go. I think that equity in practice is going to result in some weird combination of A, affirmative action rebooted, B, reparations hidden under a different name so that they can still be demanded under the regular name, and C, getting rid of measurement tools that would allow for there to be accountability or to say that things have been fulfilled. So equity will turn into more demands for equity and for claims that equity has not been achieved no matter what. Equity will be assessed historically, so we'll see it working functionally like reparations. It will also be assessed according to the diversity and inclusion protocols, now including belonging, and those protocols are designed specifically to make sure that they only hire the right kind of diversity. I did a podcast recently with a Indian doctor, or Indian American doctor, I suppose, American doctor whose family is from India at any rate. And he was talking about how in his own field of cardiology, they showed this racial makeup in some year, and then they showed the racial demographic in some other year. And in the second year, it was flattened down to white, black, and Latino. And he said, well, where am I on the chart? And it was explained to him in fairly simple terms that he counted as white now, and that he's the wrong kind of diversity. And these are the kinds of rubrics that are being used, but I know how the theory works. I know what the point is. Diversity and inclusion is really about installing
That's medically dangerous.
people who have a critical consciousness about their identities and finding reasons under inclusion and belonging now paradigms to remove people who aren't, and to make special accommodations to keep in the critical theorists. I understand what's going on. And so I'm not behind this. So I'm seeing these things. And I went on Glenn Beck, I think that was in August, just before Cynical Theories came out. And Glenn catches me at the very end. I'm on his podcast. He catches me at the very end and he says, we've had a great conversation, which is true. I think Glenn's an interesting and great guy. Again, a man I don't agree with in many regards, but nevertheless, I would consider him a friend. And I am happy, by the way, to be making friends with people I don't agree with and having genuine relationships with people that I have substantive differences
Oh, the progressives are just shitting themselves hearing that stuff. Glenn Beck?
with. It's been a very great, growing, and thought-provoking process. And also one of expanding and genuinely expanding my sense of humanity and my like for my fellow man.
Yeah.
Actually, you can look it up on YouTube. It's on Blaze TV for sure. But I watched the interview between Glenn Beck and James Lindsay. And Glenn Beck, ever since he went independent and actually, repented for his sins, and he did. He actually said, I was part of the problem back when I was working for these news networks. That's why I went independent. When he sat there and talked to James Lindsay, he was nothing but nice. Right? And whenever they disagreed on an issue, he was nothing but nice, saying, well, we obviously disagree there. But what he did, but what he did is, and that's what should be happening.
He's a Mormon, isn't he? Speaking of Mormons,
I think Glenn Beck is a Mormon. I think we're correct.
He is.
LDS being reps.
But the point is this is where, like, even Ron Paul decided that he was going to build coalitions. Like, Ron Paul is on the Jimmy Dore show, like, once a month at least. Jimmy Dore is a hyper progressive.
Yeah.
Like, he distrusts the government. I think he would agree with James Lindsay on a lot of these things. I don't think he would ever go for, I'm voting for Trump because the Democratic Party is so bad. But nonetheless, he understands the importance of coalitions on issues that matter. Right? So they have a coalition on the idea that, like, war is bad for the country. And even if we disagree on everything else, we are going to form a coalition on this one thing.
Yeah.
And that is completely lost. And I will say both parties right now. I don't think the Republicans or the Democrats understand the importance of coalitions. With few exceptions, right? Like, you would have people like Tulsi Gabbard that would reach across the aisle for anti-war legislation.
She was met with quite open hands, though. There are many people on the right that are very interested in furthering the anti-war peace deals. That
well, yeah, and actually, isn't it fucked up that the anti-war movement has become a right-wing movement?
That's
it always was. It always was right and left.
Ban the bomb, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, growing up and growing up around a bunch of anti-war, because, like, you know, firefighters, half of them were Vietnam vets, and they were Democrat and Republican, and the one thing they could always get behind is no new wars. I never associated it with a right or a left-wing thing, so much as I associated it with what kind of drugs you did.
Not wrong.
Tyro in the chat says Ron Paul worked with both Dennis Kucinich and Bernie Sanders on issues.
Yeah.
And it was true because he understood the importance of coalitions for important issues.
Right.
Like, it wasn't about
as all voices.
It wasn't about me and you sitting around together saying we agree on everything. It was about me and you saying, well, we agree on this one point that is good for the American people, so we will work together to push this through.
That's right.
And we don't see that right now. We just don't. Like, the divide is too steep.
No.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm wondering if it isn't just the leadership, because if you look at what is actually being authored and who's working together, a lot of the stuff that Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell are poo-pooing from each other are bipartisan. Now, I'm not talking about the stimulus package. I'm talking about a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Quite possibly, but the rhetoric is not there, so I don't know. I'm actually scared when both parties get together and agree on something and pass legislation, because usually it's fucking terrible. 9 out of 10 times when both parties agree,
like the crime bill,
they pass legislation. The crime bill,
like the crime bill,
or the Patriot Act,
or the Patriot Act. Exactly, man. God damn. And you know, it's like the Patriot Act should have had a shelf life. Right, it should, it'd be like through this period of time.
They have the sunset provisions, and they just keep renewing it.
They keep renewing it, right? I would kill it. I think it's time to. I mean, really, right?
Oh, it should have died. It should have died in 2004.
You know, we have no privacy now, anyway.
Yeah, the dire situation that we're in is that
we've been invaded. We've been hacked.
It's not even a topic for discussion, though. Like, it's not what we're voting on at the moment. I wish it was, but we're not.
Holy shit! Insanity.
It's been all good. But he catches me at the end and asks me who I'm going to vote for. He says he didn't want to politicize it. Maybe he did. I don't care. But I was quite forthright with him. He told me I didn't have to answer, and I did answer. And I said that I couldn't vote for Biden. At that point, I could not vote for Biden. And the culmination of what had been happening over the summer with the riots, the radical leftism, the whole thing, plus understanding how it works. So we've got to talk about how it works. But first I'll get to the very point of how I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? Unless something very radical changes in the next week or two, which frankly is not going to happen, I'm actually just going to vote for Republicans. I'm going to vote for Trump. I said on Twitter, I am going to do this unhappily. And I mean it. It is unhappily. I don't want to have to do this. I very sheepishly, I will confess, I'm human, believe it or not, that in 2016, somebody just after the election, I think I was expressing my despair on Twitter, told me I would vote for some troll, told me I would vote for Trump in 2020, and I have never forgot it. Somebody with like 10 followers or something. And I was like, no, screw that guy, I will not, no matter what. And that's actually been the biggest bulwark to giving in to say, well, Biden can't be elected, therefore I'll vote for Trump, to my entire thought process. That, by the way, so think twice before you go on there and be a dickhead to people on Twitter, because you might actually be creating a lot of the opposite of what you want to create. Yeah, I know, mea culpa, whatever. I'm not perfect on Twitter either. So anyway, I ran into this article the other day in the New Republic. The New Republic is not exactly a fringe outlet, and it's another one of these, bombings of the idea of the Constitution. First, it makes a full-throated argument full of all of these kind of strange points about hypocrisy and all these other things for why the Democrats, should they win, need to pack the court. They need to add justices, either 2 so that they can get a slight conservative majority, or 4 so they can have a solid liberal majority on the court. So now we're talking about a Supreme Court with not 9, but either 11 or 13 justices, specifically so that there is more Democrat advantage. And there's all these kind of bad arguments for that. But then the title of the article is that the Constitution is the crisis. Okay? The Constitution is the crisis. Hold up. No. The Constitution is the thing that prevents the crisis from morons who want to do things like throw the Constitution in the trash when they don't get their way. And so I read this article, and it says that the left should be working to abolish the Constitution and either replace it with a new one of their design that's updated according to their, as they say, undeniable moral superiority over that of the framers of the Constitution, which of course they're saying, well, they had slaves, so they're obviously immoral, rather than they were possibly just as moral and just as clear-headed in a different historical context, which is actually at the heart of their whole damn concept of theory in the first place, is that cultures are in their own context in time and space. But nevertheless, all of a sudden, we have it. No, not we. The woke of today have an undeniable moral superiority to the framers of the Constitution, the authors of liberalism, the authors of the documents that led to the first wholesale abolishment of slavery and ending of racial inequality, like institutional racial inequality, real discrimination in the history of the world. Not perfectly, not painlessly, not quickly enough, but the people who wrote down the principles that were...
It wouldn't have, if it was painless, it wouldn't have mattered.
Through time.
Man, this
would
is one
become
of
the answer to
preach on, motherfucker.
their failings
Once again, James
that were,
Lindsay is
in many
hitting the
respects,
nail
part and parcel
on
with
the
the
head.
time. And you can read their own struggles about that in their own words. We've recorded them. We have them. They're available. And we're supposed to get rid of that now because the woke have clear moral superiority, which then, therefore, obviously translates into clear capacity to rule over other people and rewrite the rules of the game on their terms. Or they say, maybe we'll just not have a constitution at all. We'll just govern according to whoever has the power, which is, the point of a constitution is actually to remove the human as much as possible. To remove the human as much as possible. In other words, to take something like the organization of an entire society, which is a fundamentally human enterprise, and to put down a set of principles and ideals and goals and procedures that take the moment-to-moment ugliness of being a human with our selfish motivations, with our biases, with everything else out of the equation. It is a step toward legal objectivity. We call these the neutral principles of constitutional law, which critical race theory in the introduction to the book titled Critical Race Theory, an Introduction by Delgado and Stefanchik, say that the point of critical race theory is to question at its very base the liberal order, Enlightenment rationalism, equality theory, and the neutral principles of constitutional law. And these people are the ones who are morally superior and are now going to get rid of the Constitution, abolish the Constitution. And I read this article and I'm aghast. Because one of the rules of wokeness is that the slope is always slippery, isn't it? They say they're going to do a thing and they push for it, and they push for it, and they push for it until they get it. Why? Because they can't compromise. Of course they can't compromise. Compromising is complicity. Complicity with the status quo. Every inch that you compromise is status quo that you are still agreeing to. Dismantling the status quo, overthrowing the status quo, abolishing the status quo, resisting the status quo in every regard is the heart of the theory. So now we have a mainstream outlet with not a huge but a significant voice writing an article saying that the goal for the left.
Alright, so like that rant by James Lindsay over the last 5 minutes, it was kind of like it's the bottom of the ninth of the World Series. Game 7, game's tied. James Lindsay's at the plate. Wind up, the pitch comes. Lindsay slings. Home run!
No,
James
this is
Lindsay wins the World Series. Like, he literally explained the exact problem in the best words he ever could have.
But, yeah. I feel bad, though, because he's in for a really rude awakening.
He's having the rude awakening.
There's the rest of it.
This entire rant by him is the rude awakening.
Yeah.
Well, tell me I'm wrong.
A part of it is a rude awakening. The other part of it is he doesn't realize that he's trying to hold on to his own progressive ideas without realizing that the progressive ideas don't fit in with the rest of the natural paradigm he's read and found to be true.
Yeah, I can actually set that aside because he at least is arguing within these rules of the liberal order.
I just feel bad for him.
He's realized it's being broken, and it's not being broken by the Republicans right now. It's being broken by the Democrats.
I feel bad for him because it's going to take him a long time to realize that the progressive ideals he thinks he holds are not actually progressivism at all, and it's I don't know, it's going to be hard.
I actually do not care. I don't care as long as like I'm sitting there and arguing with lefties again, and we're arguing in the same realm of liberal ideology.
Yeah.
Like, that is much easier to argue, and it's much easier to walk away from somebody that disagrees with you when they're in that same realm. But it is like it's nothing but vitriol if you're arguing with somebody that is a critical theorist.
Yeah, it's just watching him slow walk this is frustrating for me because I know how intelligent he is, and I'm like, dude, come on. You really got to put away the emotions here, dude. I thought you were like a mathematician. What are you doing? So,
well, he's bringing down on this. By the way, I just want to with what Atema said. Before he recorded this, he just said that he was going to turn his mic on and start talking. So this is not a plain. This is probably the most honest you're going to see somebody.
It's very emotional. It's very emotional, and I find that frustrating because it's politics, and you got to try to like push your emotions as far out of that.
Well, no, I get it, but I think any of us, if we just turned our mic on and started recording on a topic, I don't think we would get to as many truths as James did on this one. It would be hard.
Oh yeah,
Maybe we would, But
I think I'm still just a little pissed at him for the whole punish Republicans thing, and then to go on to talk about being apolitical. I'm like, dude, that's cognitive dissonance at the highest. Come on now.
What? Hold on. This is why I thought you would love this, because he 180'd. He's like,
I know. I'm
wait a
laughing
minute.
at it in the middle of the whole thing.
The Republicans aren't the ones that need to be punished. It's the Democrats. I remember because whenever we were actually first deciding to do this stream, I said, like, listen to this guy and these people, and I gave you James Lindsay, Helen Pluckrose, and Peter Boghossian. And one of the first ones you found by James Lindsay,
oh god, it was so annoying.
One of the ones where he was like bashing on Trump constantly, and you're just like, wow, he like just doesn't hit the point at all. And I was like, if you listen to this one that we're listening to on stream, you're gonna be like, wow, he kind of came to Jesus. And he did, right?
He did. It's like, dude, calm down, Kanye. You did whatever. It's cool. I just laugh because it's such a funny. I'm not political, but I would have been saying punish Republicans. Okay, James, you got a long way to go, brother. I'm so glad you've started this journey. This is going to be amusing. So. It's not like a bash. It's more like oh, you're adorable, darling. Bless your heart.
Yeah, more of a patronizing kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think it's just because I'm older and I've been dealing with a 13-year-old the last couple of weeks, so my give a fucks are kind of gone.
Heard that. All right, you want to keep rolling?
Yep, let's go.
Should be to get rid of the Constitution entirely and pack the court in the meantime. Or, if they can't, let's just ignore the Supreme Court, because it shouldn't have to apply to what they want to do anyway. They should be unaccountable to objective principles because they have clear moral superiority. And you know what I say to that? Pardon me. I know that people with tender ears listen to this, but fuck that. Fuck all of that. So I'm not so crude as to say that article led me to vote for Trump or some silliness. This has been a build-up. We can consider that article to be something like the straw that broke the camel's back. Because I understand how it works, okay? I understand how this works. First of all, I understand how theory works and how it is uncompromising and how it drives to get to its goals. And its goals include that. Subjective standards that they're in control of with their undeniable bid on moral superiority over the rest of us. Being their right to rule. Secondly, I know practically how it works. There was a talk given at the Claremont Institute. Again, not an institute I normally am a big fan of, that said that the basic boiled down nuts and bolts of this election are these. You have in Trump a man who is very pro-America. You have a man running for president who loves America with all of his faults, with all of his humanness, with all of his ugliness, with all of his warts, with all of his bumps. You have a man who loves America. And he's going up against a man who is controlled by a movement that hates America. And that's the key observation. Biden isn't the room. You've heard the room is not the room. You're talking to something bigger and broader. Biden is not the room. Biden is irrelevant at best. Biden is George Bridges. For those of you familiar with the Evergreen State College story, Biden is George Bridges at worst. Biden is very unlikely to be woke. I don't think that Biden has a ton of consistency in his principles, to be honest with you. Not to say that Trump does either, except that Trump is rather unabashedly pro-America, at least in his conception of what America is. I don't think Biden is woke. I don't know about Kamala Harris, who we have to admit is likely to have a good shot at becoming president before the end of the 4 years if we elect Biden with her on the ticket. I don't know.
She's not woke, but she's
not
learned how to use it.
She pulls some woke tricks. I think it's just about power. Well, wokeness is great for power. I don't trust her. I don't think the voters trusted her either. She did terribly in the Democratic primaries. But I don't think Biden's woke, and I don't think that it matters. I don't think George Bridges was woke either. I think that George Bridges was permissive to wokeness, and that's enough. Because this is a matter of a movement. It doesn't matter what establishment Democrats believe, as far as I can tell, because establishment Democrats can't do anything about their woke problem. They are controlled. They are pinned in. And even if they could, it wouldn't matter. Even if they could come out, even if Biden could come out and make the strongest statements, it wouldn't matter, because that's not how woke works. Woke works by infiltrating administrative bureaucracies and filling them with busybodies who set policies for everybody else. That's one of the tools that the woke use. They change policy at the administrative level, where it's unaccountable to legislatures, where it's not going to get stopped unless you have executives above it who are willing to take a stand against it. Trump has done this in the executive order that's nominally against critical race theory, but is in fact against a set of divisive beliefs and actions that both prohibit critical race theory, a critical theory based in sexual or sex identity, and also white supremacy and patriarchy, by the way. They prevent any discrimination, scapegoating, or stereotyping based on race or sex in an even-handed way that points in all directions. You don't hear that a lot from the people who are mad about the fact that the executive order prevents teaching the divisive concepts in critical race theory, but it actually also would prevent teaching white supremacy in any regard whatsoever, including the woke version. Wokeness infiltrates administrative bureaucracies. I gained some prominence a little over a year ago for saying that wokeness is operating like a Trojan horse. I think other people have said it. I think a lot of people notice that it operates like a Trojan horse. Trojan horse in the story was full of assassins, and they came out and they killed the guards and they opened the gate and the army could come through. The woke Trojan horse is not full of assassins, it's full of bureaucrats. It's full of people who want to go to boring administrative meetings and set community guidelines and policies for everybody. That's where wokeness operates. If wokeness has a permissive executive above it, whether that's directly above it in the office, or whether that's at the top of the office in the office of the presidency as far as the federal government is concerned, wokeness will infiltrate deeply into the administrative state, the administrative bureaucracy, and institute itself in ways that are almost impossible to get rid of. You won't get rid of it in 50 years. And this has already happened to a tremendous degree. It even happens under Trump. So I shudder to think what would happen under Biden, who is open to this idea. He's permissive of this idea. He panders to this idea quite openly. And he has championed ideas like the Title IX changes back in 2011 that turned many respects of the Title IX office into kangaroo courts across all of our universities and helped to open the Pandora's box that is this hot mess all over the United States right now. Biden is not strong against this, but even if he were, it would barely matter. Trump is somewhat strong against this, and that's going to be barely enough. And let me just clear something up. I don't think Trump is going to fix this, okay? Trump can't fix this. That's not how this works. And that's why this is a difficult decision. The culture is where it matters, and Trump is inflaming the hell out of the culture. The hard question is what Trump is doing leading people to understand how off the rails this woke coup is. It's taking over, it has taken over, it has control of the Democratic Party, it has control of a great deal of our left-leaning media, it totally owns the universities, it owns most of our education systems, it completely owns our colleges of teacher education. These are nightmares, and these all need to be cleaned out. But it does control the Democratic Party too, and it will control the administrative bureaucracies in every one of those kinds of institutions, including the federal government under a permissive head. Trump is barely a bulwark against this. He's doing some stuff to get rid of it, but even the EO that he put out, the executive order he puts out, has major problems. It has to be enforced. It has to be enforced by people who know what they're doing, up against people who are slippery with their language and know how to change the meanings of words out from under you. That's another thing, by the way, that the woke does. It can change your policy without changing your policy just by changing the words or the context in which they're understood, changing the definitions of the words. We saw that with Barrett's confirmation. She said sexual orientation. You have every major Democratic politician in the last, 12 months saying sexual orientation. She says sexual orientation. Somebody complains. Next thing you know, Merriam-Webster changes the fucking definition that day. That day? You can't empower this. You can't empower this. They change it to make her wrong in the dictionary that day. This is how this shit works. And if you don't get it, you're missing the point. Biden is not the room. Biden is permissive of it. Even somebody who's not permissive of it can barely control it. And even if they could, they couldn't. Trump will inflame the public. It will get worse on the ground. The insanity will get worse in our institutions outside of the federal government, but it might give our federal agencies a chance to breathe and do some real work, to do real investigations, and to bring, say, good legislation like the actual Civil Rights Act to bear upon these excesses, these clearly discriminatory, hostile workplace environment generating excesses that this explosion of wokeness, unmitigated explosion of wokeness over the summer has brought upon our workplaces through our administrative bureaucracies in the HR department, infecting up to the C-suite. Where? It's always there. Infecting our universities. Where? At the level of gigantic bloated administrations where universities, because of COVID, are about to collapse under their own financial weight. and yet they still are increasing their budgets for diversity, equity, and inclusion and hiring expensive diversity, equity, inclusion officers. Administrative bureaucracies is where this shit takes over. That's how it gets in, that's where it manipulates, and it sets policies. It's the guy that comes in, or the woman half the time that comes in, more than half the time I would say, comes into your organization, gets on your freaking Slack channel and is like, I know, I'll write up some community guidelines for us. The workplace community needs these kinds of guidelines so that it's a little more inclusive here. It's those people who decide to define the community for you and then decide to define the rules for the community for you. Those are the people, and they're all full of critical theory that they learned in universities, and they fill administrative bureaucracies. Trump can barely control it in his administration. He's going to drive the population crazy. The best hope we have is that buys time for hopefully there are some adults in the room somewhere who are going to file lawsuits, who are going to push back on this, who are going to make the argument. And meanwhile, while real things are happening that actually start to remove the woke threat from our world in material ways, meanwhile, we have the opportunity to make the argument against a culture that's losing its mind with wokeness because it's not getting its way. Because that's what I see right now. I see the left. I see people saying, oh, we need to vote for Biden to calm them down. Wokeness will calm down. No, wokeness can't compromise. It takes as much ground as it can get, and it holds that ground forever. It cannot compromise. It cannot go back. It cannot give way. It cannot meet with half measures. Because that would be against the cardinal principle of the theory. It can't do it. So Trump will inflame things in the culture. He creates a flimsy but existent bulwark to institutionalizing at the level of administrative policy throughout our federal government. He creates an institutional bulwark that will prevent ease of passage of legislation because it could become legislative, and then our nightmares begin in earnest.
In case you didn't hear, Excel is tumescent.
Amen.
Brother,
Biden
you
will
gay.
not do that. Biden can't have this office. Now, let me get something. Let me get something straight for you guys. I live in a solidly red state. Solidly red. My vote in this election isn't going to matter. It's wholly symbolic. I could save my reputation, if that's what this is about, by saying, I'm not going to vote. I'm going to vote for myself. I'm going to vote for a third-party candidate. I'm going to just skip the president, and I'm going to vote down ballot, and I'm going to vote how I feel, blah, blah, blah. I could do all that, but I didn't say that. I said I'm probably going to have to vote for Trump. It's wholly symbolic. And the symbol is, this has to stop. This cannot be empowered. None of these ideas that the woke movement that controls what will happen under a Biden administration, whatever Biden does, can be empowered. We have in California an attempt with very awfully manipulative, lying language under, I think it's called Prop 16, to remove the anti-discrimination language from the state constitution of California so that you can discriminate positively for certain races, which by default creates the situation where you're discriminating negatively against other races, which I hear from people in all 50 states is basically the de facto state of affairs. It's happening anyway, and until people get the necessary information and the courage to contact the appropriate attorneys, that's going to continue. People will have to be sued. Otherwise, these policies are going to stay in place because people doing risk assessments in the central offices, the corporate offices, are going to keep thinking that pandering to the woke thing is the best thing there is for business. And this isn't okay. These ideas cannot be empowered at that level. So I have to, despite it being symbolic, despite it destroying the credibility with the audience, I think I have to reach the most, which is the center left. For stupid reasons, stupid, immature reasons. It destroys my credibility with them for stupid, immature reasons, as though I didn't spend literally 2 years articulating the complexity of this decision and wrestling with this decision and thinking my way through this decision and watching developments to lead to this decision. It destroys the credibility with these idiots who don't want
so
to
his
think,
problem is he doesn't
but only want to
understand
react to what they perceive as a gigantic threat in the other direction.
Excel?
Yeah, no, he doesn't get when he's saying like people don't understand my decision, despite the fact that I've laid it out over the course of 2 years, is what he's talking about is he still had some NPCs following him. All right, these were gray-faced motherfuckers that were never gonna, no matter what you said, like, if you didn't say, like, well, vote for Biden because Trump is orange man bad, you're an evil person. And those are the people he's referring to. Those are the people on Twitter that are causing the faux outrage.
Right.
They're the gray-faced people.
Right. We're almost done here.
But I'm doing it anyway, because this has to stop. This cannot be empowered. The woke movement will control the administrative bureaucracy, at which point we're stuck with it. That can't happen. George Bridges didn't have to be woke to destroy Evergreen. He had to allow an equity council to push through an equity program while a rowdy bunch of students became absolutely unaccountable underneath it. And they turned into gangs, bullying gangs, and they ultimately ended up melting the college down. And we don't need to see that happen to America. So no, a stand has to be taken. So this wasn't a decision I made in haste. It wasn't a decision I made comfortably, and it's not a decision I'm particularly happy about, but it's a decision I'm mostly confident in and standing by. It was not the result of a single article. The single article was the last straw on something that has been building up for months. You can't gaslight people forever. And I'm not saying that Trump is some paragon of truth. The guy goes up there and just says, you know, whatever kind of twisty bullshit works for the moment. Half the time it's just kind of these weird made-up spins and stuff that doesn't make sense and whatever else. And it appears that the man has authoritarian tendencies, at least in his rhetoric, that doesn't seem to necessarily come out in his policy. And of course I understand that's concerning. So people feel like they're now having to choose between an authoritarian.
I love how he realizes that.
What?
This goes back to, like, I love how he realizes that people that support Trump, they don't take him literally whenever he posts shit on Twitter or whatever. But
Right.
they do take him seriously. And he's just, like, James Lindsay is just recognizing that Trump will say some shit, but he doesn't actually act that way. Right? Like, if he says something that sounds kind of crazy, most likely he was being, like, sarcastic or in the moment.
Right.
But he doesn't actually try to, like, he's not, whatever authoritarian tendencies you think he has no power or will to carry it out. Right?
Right.
He operates within the system.
Right.
And as far as the way he's governed, he's not governed that way.
Correct.
But
Hopefully the
he
calmer
doesn't
space that Joe
understand
Biden
what
might bring to
talking
us.
shit is all about.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think it's just James doesn't understand what talking shit is all about.
That's the
He's
Yankee
never
thing, man.
exposed to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's just
Exactly.
never
I think he gets them a little bit because earlier he was just like,
He's from Tennessee. isn't
Donald Trump, like, presses the fucking thumb on the wound for all these entities I hate, which Donald Trump absolutely does. And those aren't removed from him, like, saying things that sound maybe authoritarian. But in practicality, like, he doesn't act that way.
he? Doesn't he teach at the University of Tennessee? Knoxville?
I thought he was in Missouri, but I don't know.
I remember him saying that he was in Knoxville, Tennessee. At one point, I don't know. We're going to finish this?
If he's
Let's
elected.
wrap it up.
But what people don't understand, or I really don't think they understand, is that the woke ideology that controls the movement, that will control what happens under a Biden administration, again, Biden is not the room, that ideology is totalizing. It is a totalitarian. It's not authoritarian, it's totalitarian. It is a totalitarian movement. The difference is that an
No
authoritarian
shit.
movement is going to kind of, set very strict regulations. You got these military parades and all of this crap.
Once again,
A totalitarian movement cares what you think. It's going to get into your head. If you think the wrong thing, or you don't at least perform that you're thinking the right things, you're screwed. Totalitarianism is much scarier than authoritarianism, which is no defense of authoritarianism, but if you have to pick between the two, it's no contest. Totalitarianism is the stuff of 1984, which is why we have this whole 2 + 2 = 4 or 5 thing that's been happening all summer. this can't be empowered. Micromanaging busybodies who like to go to meetings will fill administrative bureaucracies.
Bullwinkle, thanks for the $10. Good stream. Have a cookie. Thank you.
Powered by a permissive, rubber stamp, or even encouraging executive. And we're going to be stuck with a totalitarian ideology with a very invigorated base. The radicals will run wild. The only thing that I think would reel them in is something like a social credit system, which is a totalitarian move. Defund the police, community policing, spy on your neighbor, social credit, can't buy anything. Okay, it could work, I guess. It's not what anybody wants. Performative Facebook post, or you aren't going to be able to buy lunch this week. That is kind of a direction of like worst case scenario there. I'm not saying that if Biden gets elected, that's what's happening, but I am saying that the kinds of things that we saw under woke excesses in universities that led to the collapse of the Evergreen State College when in a particular excess are going to become the standard of the United States. There was an article a year or two ago titled "We All Live on Campus Now" or something like that, or "We're All on Campus Now," referring to the fact that the woke problem had burst out of the campus environment like my colleagues and I predicted it would and were called idiots for. And we all live on campus now. Well, if Biden's elected, it will genuinely be that case. We will all live on campus now. The kinds of administrative policies set by diversity, equity, and inclusion councils and the likes, things that are actually already happening in our states, they're already happening in our schools, are all going to be protected, defended, and entrenched under a sympathetic and permissive administrator. This isn't acceptable and it can't happen, so I'm voting for Trump. End of story. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I hope you understand after almost an hour of trying to explain it to you that this was a decision I made with a lot of thought and a lot of wrestling and a lot of watching and a lot of, let me just be very clear, really well-informed observation. I'm not shooting from the hip. I'm not fighting from emotion. I am watching what's happening and I know how it works. And my message is Biden cannot win. I say that as somebody who wants to stay apolitical. I didn't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do this. I'm pissed off that I have to do this. But nevertheless, it's where it is. So, make America great again.
I love it. I love it.
That was when, like, he made up for everything with the closing. He made up for everything with the closing. Like, he did. He made up for everything because it was like he suddenly said, okay, yeah, I know I'm a crackpot and I'm doing some dumb shit here. And this is fucking super gay. But, you know, I'm still kind of fascinated by the fact that it's taken him so long, even after studying all this shit, to see it, you know?
But why are you fascinated? Because let's really think back. Like, let's just look at, like, personality, right? Tim Pool took for fucking ever, right? He was sitting there talking about, like, wow, this is all crazy, and it's all, like, crazy shit coming from the left. Just imagine, like, how many other people are thinking that way. So, people that have this idea ingrained in their head about what the left is supposed to be. Even Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein, they commented on James Lindsay's post, and the best was not Brett's, but Eric's, where he said you have a whole bunch of people right now that are becoming like he called them involcons.
Yeah, involuntary conservatives.
Yeah, involuntary conservatives, where they're just like, there's this left-wing ideology that is antithetical to everything we believe in.
The bus is in the fucking ditch, people.
Left wing,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, the bus was in the ditch like 5 years ago. Man, it's gone completely off the rails. Somebody has got to, have the balls to try to, get the thing back in order. And,
well, Sidrise is sitting here saying the riots really woke Tim Pool up. But even in this video that we watched, James Lindsay said like the straw that broke the camel's back was he's sitting there on June 30th in a hotel room in LA right before he's about to go on Joe Rogan, and he sees this guy on TV standing in front of a burning building, trying to tell him that the protests have been mostly peaceful.
Yeah, Malin, thanks, man, for the $1. Yay. It's welcome.
Hey, Huckum. Huckum.
Hack'em.
Huckum.
And Tyro, I did not know that Brett Weinstein got yeeted off of Facebook, but it does not surprise me.
Yeah, he got yeeted. Yeah. Prospero's rather cross about it.
I bet.
She was quite unhappy about that one.
Indeed. Well,
I don't know what they're doing, but yeah.
Yeah. We're at the top of the hour.
Oh shit.
2 hours have gone by.
I think we're at a good place to like try to end the stream.
It's perfect. I believe I agree with you 100%. And as we end here, what are you going to do anything later, Excel?
Maybe. I'm not going to promise anything.
Okay. Well, I was going to say at 10 AP goes live, so you can hang around there until Excel decides what he wants to do. Just trying to spread the love for the extended family out there. Tomorrow I will be talking with one and only B Token, and that's 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, and 2 Pacific. And Monday, Becca and I are going to be continuing our education of communism. More of how China and Russia were infiltrating the West. So
God, every time I watch that, I just want to come in and be like, and now you can see how this relates to postmodern and critical theory.
dude, it is all so fucking. It's terrifying when you understand.
Yeah, they're not that much. Like, there's that link is there. Like,
No shit. That's why they want to do all this backwards math and shit. They want to make everybody stupid because you have to do that. The Russians did it, and the fucking Chinese did it. They made all their people stupid so they could re-educate them in nothing but politically soaked shit.
Why do you think they think it's okay to eat things like bats?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Because it's good for the fucking country. Anyway.
Insane.
All right, let's say goodbye, y'all, and we'll be out of here.
Bye.
Joining in, is the Bama game next Saturday at night?
I believe it is. It's Mississippi
All right, so
State.
we will not see you next week, but we will see you the week after.
Should be, yeah.
Because we do this every Saturday, so long as there's not an Alabama night game.
Yeah, sorry about that. When it's all over, this will be a regular thing for me. Anywho, and on that note,